Hey, what is going on there, guys? Welcome back to another installment of Drive to Magic. I am joined by Gregory here.
Oh, yeah.
And it's raining, as you guys can tell in the background, so this is probably going to be somewhat annoying for the listeners out there. So I apologize for that, but we did still want to do a Drive to Magic podcast here and talk about some stuff. But because it's raining, we're probably going to have a longer podcast because people in Pittsburgh seem to drive like jackasses whenever it rains.
Yeah, they just forget. They just forget how to drive completely.
It's like back to basics. They have that Elmo steering wheel just plopped onto the dash.
A block of cement.
That's pretty fair. But topics for today. We wanted to talk about Mono Blue. I think that's probably the biggest thing that is going to be the talking point today. Is just Mono Blue and the feelings that we have as a collective group on what Mono Blue actually is.
Our scientists have still not found conclusive
evidence
or come to a clear definition. So, yeah, episode 5, the Pro Tour, the Rise of Devotion, Mono Blue, and
the downfall of Miss Cutter Hydra because it was barely played.
It should have been.
Should have been so much. Well,
but the number one card, the card that everyone's talking about, and that of course we're going to talk about, Master of Waves.
Oh yes.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
Making a big splash, making waves in Standard.
Master of Waves. That card is so good and so awful at the same time. It's really good. It's really good when it's good, but when it's awful, it's really awful.
At first glance, you're like, this is just a drop in the bucket, really. This is nothing to worry about. And all of a sudden, you're being flooded by elemental tokens. And if you don't have a way to answer this card, you're up shit creek without a paddle.
Yep, that's probably the best way that you could have worded it in that scenario. But I think the one thing about the blue decks is that they are. I want to say I can't remember how Dylan Jeffrey worded this. Well, it was like it's basically like you're playing 50 mediocre cards stacked high, and you just have Master of Waves and Thassa in that deck.
Well, also how from Top Deck DJ Keener and Ryan Rep had mentioned the deck being, whenever they built it and were playtesting it earlier this week, to get some like first-hand experience and understanding as to why the deck is even a thing. It literally is a pile of bad cards that just happens to be good together.
Yeah, it's the synergy between them. Like Nightveil Spectre,
Tidebinder Mage.
Those are, well, I don't even want to say Tidebinder Mage, because in some cases I could see that card.
Frostburn Weird.
Frostburn Weird in previous seasons has just been awful. Like, that is, if you would have played that last season, somebody would have just looked at you and been like, wow, that is the most fringe unplayable card I have ever seen. Why are you playing it?
Yeah, sure, he's good in draft, but don't try to bring your draft deck into Standard.
Yeah. But now Frostburn Weird is a thing. Nightveil Spectre was probably one of the weirdest cards out of Gatecrash. It was somewhat playable whenever you had mana fixing. What was it? Prophetic Prism was in Gatecrash.
Mm-hmm.
I remember at GP Pit seeing people playing Nightveil Spectre, being able to eat things off the top, and then being able to play them with Prophetic Prism, which was kind of a cool interaction. That was just kind of that. But outside of Limited, that card was pretty awful up until now. And the only reason why it's $5 is because it's triple blue.
And now I'm looking back and I'm going, oh, so that's why it was the buy a box promo for Gatecrash. I get it now.
R&D was secretly just planning it for very, very long. We just didn't get the signs. We didn't get the memos on it.
Yes, I mean, the most powerful cards in the deck are Master of Waves.
Of course.
Thassa, God of the Sea, and then the Biden. Specifically, it's the interaction with both Thassa and the Biden, which are, those three cards are pretty much the backbone of the deck. Then the rest of the deck is primarily devotion enablers, creatures that by themselves look pretty awful, but end up providing large amounts of devotion to turn on Thassa and provide a large amount of elemental tokens for the deck. And you will also see some disruption spells like Cyclonic Rift.
Which I love.
Oh yeah, I'm glad to see that card is actually getting some play. But also Rapid Hybridization, one of my favorite cards from Gatecrash 2. The old Pongify reprint.
Yeah.
And somehow the deck comes together and works very well. Aside from those cards, though, the other big player is Nykthos, the legendary land, which for 2 and then tapping it provides mana equal to your devotion to a chosen color. And because the deck goes all in on blue and is already putting up a lot of blue symbols for Master of Waves and to get Thassa online, being able to overload a Cyclonic Rift early on in the game, providing a huge tempo swing, is completely realistic. It is an absolute option.
I mean, even just being able to have Cyclonic Rift, like, I think that's probably one of the most amazing things that deck has. Even not overloading it, just casting it for its normal casting cost is great, just because it can bounce back so many different things that your opponents have, especially if it's something like your opponent committed like 5 mana into something, or like even 4 mana into a creature or something like that they expect is just going to be a blocker like Desecration Demon, and they're like, all right, well, you have to be in the awkward situation where you have to sack something, but like on the mindset wherever you're playing Desecration Demon, you're really thinking like, all right, well, if they get Master of Waves, they pretty much win, but if they don't get Master of Waves, I'm going to have to force them to either not swing or sack something. Then you play Cyclonic Rift, and they're like, all right, well, GG's, just scoop it up right there. Or, well, at least close to it. But Cyclonic Rift is really good. I think what the deck really needs, or I would like for it to have, and what I've been playing with it, is more counterspells, because I think counterspells, while they do take away from the tempo, they do take away from being more aggressive with the deck. The deck is not tempo based. Like, it wants to be tempo based so very badly, but it's just not. And I think counterspells are probably the best thing that you can do with that deck. For the majority of threats that could come around, except for Supreme Verdict, because there's no way for that deck to get around that.
No. Control decks, specifically Esper decks that are still playing Supreme Verdict, definitely have a good matchup of it.
Are there decks that are not running Supreme Verdict?
Our Control? No.
Oh, the way you worded it made it seem, I was like, who's the ballsy?
It was a poorly worded sentence.
No, that's fine. I was just wondering if there was one person that just had brass balls and tried to take it without Supreme Verdict.
That Rakdos Control is a deck that does exist.
Yes.
It's on the fringe, but it's a control deck that does not play Supreme Verdict.
That is true.
It does play Anger of the Gods, which is a completely different.
It's a
different sweeper.
Yeah. But it's a sweeper nonetheless. And
I guess theoretically there would be a single deck that is a control deck that does not run Supreme Verdict.
The funny thing is, we're going to a standard event right now. On Thursdays we have standard. On Fridays we have standard. Mondays we have modern. For the decks that I put together today, Greg and I are both playing green-white, which we can get into in a little bit. But off on a tangent, for the red deck wins deck. Or not red deck wins, it was big red. I put together a big red deck for our buddy Jimmy, because he just, I don't even know if he owns any standard cards at this point. He's sold out for modern, but every week he asks me to put something together for him. And knowing that DJ Keener, which if anybody plays Yu-Gi-Oh out there, if any of you listeners play Yu-Gi-Oh, you should know that he is the real deal in terms of the Yu-Gi-Oh scene. He was the second in the world for that, but he also plays Magic. He's a really great Magic player, and I want to say he's had some representation in the past for being going to events and doing well at them. But DJ is playing mono blue, and I put Anger of the Gods in Jimmy's sideboard for mono blue to be able to deal with some of the things. It doesn't deal with Master of the Waves, but it does deal with all of the elemental tokens, so that's definitely a plus side.
And that's the part you're worried about.
And it deals with Night Veil Spectre, it doesn't deal with Frostburn Weird, which is kind of a bummer, but the only thing you have to watch out for is Angry Owl, because that damn Angry Owl makes your Anger of the Gods cost 4, and it's really annoying.
Oh,
And
I love Angry Owl.
of course, we're talking about Judge's Familiar, which is just known as Angry Owl.
I call him Serious Owl.
Serious Owl, that's
He's
fair.
all like, I am Serious Owl. This is Serious Guild. We're the Azorius.
That's fair. That's probably fair. But yeah, for that tangent, I did put in Anger of Gods for that mono blue, because whenever you're playing a just big red, it's kind of awkward to play up against that deck. There's also Mizzy Mortars. I have 3 Mizzy Mortars, which that deck can get to overload cost pretty easily. I did. Whenever I was making it, instead of doing like 4 Mutavaults, I did 3 Mutavaults and 1 Nykthos that way, so that even if you get like an awkward hand, you can still overload, not Cyclonic Rift, you can overload your Mizzy Mortars to a fairly easy degree and be able to wipe out the majority of their things that they have on their board. Of course, you have to still worry about Mutavault, and them still being able to have a 3/3 Mutavault off of Master of the Waves, because #science, that is a thing.
It is.
But otherwise, it's pretty easy. Like you should have a pretty fair matchup with that deck, as long as you're able to get rid of all of their devotion enablers. So
yeah,
that's pretty easy.
So last week we were looking at the Star City Games Cleveland top 8 and noticing how there was no blue in the top 8 at all.
Yep.
And how that was our major talking point for the week to some extent.
God, why did we have to mention anything?
All the while, there were 2 separate groups working behind the scenes with a secret tech that is the mono blue devotion deck. On the one hand, you had the French team headed up by Raphael Levy doing his alpha versions of the deck, and ultimately leading to the second and first place winners of the Pro Tour, who were part of the French team. On the other side of the table, you had the Americans of Star City Games.
Sam Black and Reitzel.
Nassif and Bood, they broke standard. It happens, you know. They were in the kitchen, they were cooking something up with mono blue, you know. Finkel comes in, tosses in a little spice. Sam Black, knows how to pilot it well, and there you go. From their evil layer underground comes their version of mono blue. And
I just can't help but think that whenever I see a deck like mono blue, I just think that this is something that it's like one of those fringe decks that Sam Black comes up with that ends up just being so stupid and broken that it's like the best thing to play at an FNM.
I was actually surprised that Sam Black didn't even create the deck.
Yeah,
that's
exactly what I'm thinking. Like this is up Sam Black territory right there, which Sam Black is just a fantastic deck builder, and the things that he comes up with are just things that you really won't expect. And that's a lot of stuff that like I can relate to. That's the exact type of deck building that I really enjoy. Like where you find like 1 or 2 of those fringe cards that nobody really sees, and they just kind of look at you and they're like really, you're playing this, and then you just smash them so hard. That's probably the best feeling with deck building, is being able to do something like that.
Yeah. As a side note, it's also worth pointing out that there was also mono green devotion.
Which was interesting.
And mono black devotion as well too.
Which I love.
It was not just blue that dominated the Pro Tour, but there were also showings from just other colors of devotion decks in general.
Yeah.
Makihito Mahara's green deck, even though it's closer to a red-green Gruul looking kind of deck.
Yeah, with Domri.
There's also some sick technology in that deck. Actually, one of my favorite parts from watching the Pro Tour coverage over the weekend was seeing Makihito Mahara's deck tech, where they were able to find someone from the Japanese coverage team who could translate, and then seeing BDM interview him with the translator at the side, and that was probably one of the coolest deck decks I've ever seen on coverage.
Just translating it.
And
unfortunately, I didn't get to watch any of it. I usually don't get the opportunity to watch.
Well, to be fair,
coverage.
It was pretty much on live during prime sleeping hours.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fair.
Even for people who are staying up, it's coverage would start at like 4 to 6 a.m.
His deck was playing Arbor Colossus, though, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. See, at least I was right about about knowing that card would see some play at some point in time.
Yeah, it made me happy to see it in the deck list, for sure.
Yeah, because that was the one card that I mentioned it back probably like in episode 1 or episode 2, something like that. But I mentioned that John Wallace and I were talking about cards in Theros, and we were trying to spec what was going to see play, and he happened to get a Arbor Colossus in his sealed pool, and he picks up the card, shows it to me, and asks, "Do you think this is going to see play?" And I look at him with a straight face, and I'm like, I think that card is the realest of Higgins. I think that card is so good. 6/6 for a 5, blocks Stormbreath Dragon. The monsters on it is only 1 more mana past the converted mana cost on it, and it's such a fat card that green decks just want to have it. It is the epitome of Scott Wallace decks, and those of you guys listening, you won't understand the joke, but I'll try to explain it. It's basically that we have this one player at our shop named Scott Wallace, a good buddy of ours, and pretty much every season of Standard, no matter what, he finds a way to play a deck that is just going to play the fattest green creatures, and he just smashes you and counts to 20 as quick as possible. And not too long ago, I think like 4 or 5 days ago, I put together a green deck that was mono green devotion. It was actually right before the Pro Tour started. That's when it was. It was right before the Pro Tour started, and I put together this deck that basically just ramped into Mistcutter Hydra and Colonian Hydra. And you just had these like huge X values for a Mistcutter Hydra because you were playing things like the 3/3 for 4 from Gate Crash, that was Hybrid Gruul, that whenever it attacks it gets +1/+1 counter for each attacking creature. I can't think of the name. The name's eluding me right now. But it was triple green devotion, which was great. Revenant Hunter, you had the Colonian Tusker. It was just, you just wanted to get the biggest green devotion that you could, and then you could play like Colonian Hydra, or you could just play Mistcutter Hydra and just swing bash, just make everybody just sad and have everybody run off crying. And then I sent it to our friend Andy, and I sent it to him as well, and both of them had the exact same reaction, which was just, oh my god. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it being played this week, because I know Andy has all of the cards, and if he lends that to Scott, that's probably something that I'm going to have to play against, and I'm probably not going to have fun, because I hate playing against my own decks anytime that somebody puts something together based on the suggestions that you and I make, and they'll make a deck, or I'll bring a deck for them, and something like that, something to that extent, and I have to end up playing against it. That's just the worst.
Yeah. Well, no, the key number on Arbor Colossus is 5 in the mana cost.
Yeah.
Because the nuts draw with Mahara's Green Devotion deck is turn 1 Forest, play Elvish Mystic, play your Mana Dork, and then turn 2 play Nykthos. And then with the green and with the Elf, play Burning Tree Emissary into another Burning Tree Emissary. And then with the final one that you played, use the 2 mana from that to put it into Nykthos, generating 5 mana from 5 devotion symbols on turn 3, allowing you to drop Polychronos or Arbor Colossus or any other extremely large 5-cost fatty on turn 3.
It always seems like the Japanese players always come out with, and that's why they've been the dominant force for like high-end competitive Magic for so long. Team Japan has just been so damn good with coming up with decks like that. It's just absolutely incredible. I sometimes I can't even fathom how you look at some of these cards and you think like, all right, well, maybe like Burning Tree Emissary isn't as good this season, and then you just get this demented interaction where You're just playing. You're just chaining things into another, one into the other. You Nykthos, get a big fatty on the board, and you just really can't do anything about it.
Even a card like Voyaging Satyr, which it's 2 costs as untapped target land.
Yeah.
You think, okay, 2 cost mana dork. It's not Sylvan Caryatid. It's unplayable in standard.
Yeah.
But then because it's the only card in standard that says untap target land, you're able to get 2 Nykthos activations off of the same Nykthos. Potentially even 3 if you play another one and sack your old one. Which is a very common play with that card as well, too. So, yeah, I never thought that Voyaging Satyr would be playable in standard a month after release, but there you go. There's that sick Japanese tech again.
It's absolutely incredible, and I really like that. We said it 2 episodes ago, we said it last episode, but this is probably the most diverse format that we've had in forever, and I love it. I absolutely love it. This is such a fun season of Standard to be able to play, where I am equally as excited about taking a new deck to Modern every week as I am taking a new Standard deck to a competitive event every single week, and that's just great.
Yeah, I mean, States recently happened last week, and looking over the decks that made the top 8, that definitely backs up the whole diversity thing that we've been talking about, because there were so many different kinds of decks that did well in each of the different states competitions that it's a great time to be playing Standard. This weekend we have Game Day, which some of you listening, you may be setting your sights on that. Basically, taking your Standard deck to Game Day, doing well.
You want to mention how to beat the Hydra deck? Because we totally forgot. We forgot to mention that last week, and this needs to be said this week.
At the end of this, I will do a mini segment called Hack the Hydra.
Hack the Hydra.
Where I will show you how to hack the Hydra. With only a few simple cards that hopefully you might have, or you'd be able to borrow off of your friend.
Or borrow from the shop, or buy them from the shop.
So,
depending on your connections with your shop owners and how friendly you are with them, because I'll borrow a lot of things that I'm missing just like a one-of from the shop and just give them back at the end of the tournament. But
moving back to 2013's Fever Dream, Master of Waves, I think both you and I can agree that long-term, in another month or 2, we don't see the mono blue deck being a real big force of contention or a big player in Standard. Would you agree?
I agree. I absolutely agree with that. I know there's going to be people that are going to disagree with that. They're going to really just try to stay like pretty heavy with the thought that that deck is the realest right now. But I think as real as it is right now, and as annoying as it is to play against, this is probably its prime, and from here, it's just going to get more answered. It's going to be less consistent whenever you're playing up against multiple Mistcutter Hydras, which it's just going to be like this rock, paper, scissors type of deal with, like, aggro beats control, but aggro loses out to mono blue. Control should probably have an easy time beating mono blue, but can lose to aggro, and so on and so forth with that whole way that's going to turn around. And I think a lot of decks, for the most part in this meta, really have that rock, paper, scissors type of ordeal with how things are going to be working out for them, and I think that is perfectly fine.
Yeah, I mean, eventually there's going to be decks that beat it and push it out of the format, but I would say that for the next 2 or 3 weeks, it's a reality that if you're not playing mono blue, you're going to need to find ways to beat the deck.
Yeah.
And this might be also the case for your game day in particular. Again, for your upcoming game day, if you're going to it, pay attention to the metagame at where you are playing.
On Friday. Specifically on Friday, depending on what players are going to make it to the game day on Saturday or
Make
Sunday.
your sideboarding choices, and maybe even make your deck choice based off of what you know is being played in the meta. But a couple of things I want to mention about how to beat mono blue real quick. Decks that run black and have black-based removal that aren't Abrupt Decay will have no problem being able to just immediately remove a Master of Waves and dealing with the threat. However, decks that aren't running black removal, decks that might be relying on red removal, or something, say, like mono white, which I've been running for a while, or green white, which you and I are running tonight.
Yes.
I have found that not only is Master of Waves very hard to deal with, but Tidebinder Mage is an extreme annoyance.
It's very annoying.
Because, except for people who are playing Black-White, which, is an archetype, it was the second deck that Star City Games worked on for the Pro Tour, people that aren't playing Black-White decks are going to have relevant things that will be tapped down by an opposing Tidebinder Mage. And especially whenever there's more than one. When you start seeing two at a time, the card is really, really annoying.
Yeah.
And at least in green-white, what I'm playing right now, there's not a whole lot of main removal. Something like, Celestia Charm is the closest thing the deck has to removal.
But they, for the most part, when they see green-white, they're going to be expecting Celestia Charm most of the time.
Right.
And they have to be a little bit more conscious with getting their devotion up, because as soon as Thassa hits that 5, you can Celestia Charm it away and not really have to worry about it, unless they play another one. But end of turn, that's pretty much just an easy way to get around it.
Yeah, so in white, Pacifism doesn't deal with it. Banisher Priest kind of deals with it, but is, it's vulnerable to rapid hybridization and Cyclonic Rift.
Which is awful.
And there's not a whole lot of ways that white can deal with it. One card I found that does is Last Breath. And I feel like if anyone out there is playing white and you're going to be facing some mono blue decks this weekend, it's a last ditch effort. It's an ugly card, but it does deal with Master of Waves at instant speed.
It also deals with Night Veil Spectre as well,
and it deals
which isn't bad.
And it deals with Tidebinder Mage as well,
and
too.
Tidebinder Mage, yeah. So three big targets on it.
And at instant speed, being able to remove the Tidebinder Mage and free up your tap-down guy is a perfect option.
What was the last time that we saw Last Breath? That was Shadowmoor, Morningtide?
Shadowmoor? And then
Shadowmoor.
Way before that, it was an uncommon in Mercadian Masks.
Oh, yeah, I didn't play back then.
I didn't really play. I was a kid and I had some of the cards.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I was for a very long time. It was just kitchen table magic for me. But last thing that we want to talk about, hack the Hydra. So, Greg, enlighten us.
All right, I will break this down as quickly as I can, as simply as I can, on how to get an automatic turn 3 win against the Hydra with a blue-black based deck. So basically, it comes down to you only needing 2 cards. First card is Ratchet Bomb, and you want to play this on turn 2. Hopefully you drew it in your opening hand, and you're able to drop it on turn 2. The second card you need is Mind Grind, a rare from Gatecrash, and you ideally want to play this on turn 3. Here's how it works with these 2 cards. These 2 cards will win the Hydra matchup instantaneously. On your turn 3, you Mind Grind for 1. The Hydra is an opponent that you can target with spells. And since there are no lands in the deck, Mind Grind basically removes the entire deck immediately. Now, a Hydra head, whenever it leaves the battlefield for any reason, regrows by flipping over the top 2 cards of the deck. And if there's a head card there, then that gets put onto the battlefield. And that's how the heads, quote-unquote, regrow. So what you do is you Mind Grind, leaving them with no deck, and then you crack Ratchet Bomb with 0 counters on it. The Hydra heads are permanents with a converted mana cost of 0. So Ratchet Bomb wipes out all heads that are on the battlefield. So deal with the deck, crack Ratchet Bomb, and you're done. That's it. All of the heads are off the battlefield. The game is over. Now, I realize that this pretty much takes all of the fun out of the challenge.
Yes, absolutely.
But if you want to approach this from the most spike way possible and you want that card, then that's the strategy. Ratchet Bomb and Mind Grind. Other
You're an
cards.
awful person.
Oh, I know.
Awful person.
Other cards that mill based on the number of lands, such as Balthur State's Spy or Undercity Informer, also work. And to flesh out the deck, you can have kill spells like Doomblade, and even counter spells like Syncopate, because every card that the Hydra deck essentially plays or flips over is a spell that's being cast. And so a Syncopate for 1 is a hard counter because there's no mana available for them to play.
That's funny.
And kill spells will work effectively as well too.
How would Swan Song work?
Swan Song would counter it and give them a token.
Are they permanents? Are they creatures spells, or how does that? Oh, I guess they're sorcery speed spells
I believe that every Hydra head is a creature, and every other card in the deck that's not a head is a sorcery.
But how does it work if you kill a Hydra head? We're completely digressing right now. What I'm wondering is, how does it work if you kill a Hydra head during your turn and they flip over a non-head card? Does it still get cast?
Yes.
It still gets cast. So wouldn't
Yeah.
it technically be instant speed? I guess it really doesn't matter.
It's still considered a sorcery.
I mean, that's fine.
It's still considered
That's
a
fine.
sorcery, but it's a triggered ability that each head naturally has, that when it dies, you flip over the top 2 cards of the library.
So I'm still going to play Swan Song. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just listen, get 4 Mind Grind, get 4 Ratchet Bomb, maybe a couple of Undercity Informers or Balthstrade Spies, and then pack it full of removal and
Hack the Hydra on Pro mode.
hack the Hydra.
On what is it? Is it like Guitar Hero difficulties? It's like easy, medium, hard, extreme,
I do
expert.
think it's fair to say that the Face the Hydra deck is the Freebird deck of the Magic world.
Oh, it's always nice to end off on a Leonard Skinner note. So I think that's where we're going to leave it. So
All right.
hack the Hydra. Hopefully you guys are able to hack the Hydra. Have fun at game day. Be aware of what's being played in the meta and smash some faces with whatever choice of deck you choose to bring. And until next time, guys, we are going to be signing off here. Peace out.
Good luck and have a great weekend.